In this lesson, we focus on compute in Azure. Compute means running code and applications in the cloud. The AZ-204 exam dedicates 25 to 30% of its weight to compute, so mastering this area is essential. What does compute include in Azure? It includes App Service, Azure Functions, Azure Container Instances, Azure Container Apps, Azure Kubernetes Service, and virtual machines in some scenarios. For the exam, the main focus is App Service, Functions, and Containers. Mini review. Compute in Azure equals App Service for web apps, Functions for serverless, and Containers for microservices and portability. What is Azure App Service? It is a fully managed platform to build, host, and scale web apps, REST APIs, and mobile backends. What are its advantages? No need to manage infrastructure. Built-in load balancing, scaling, authentication, custom domains, and TLS certificates. How do you create an app service? In the portal, you select App Service, choose a runtime stack like Net, Node.js, Python, or Java, configure the resource group, region, and app service plan. Deployment options. You can deploy from GitHub, Azure DevOps, Bitbucket, or local Git. You can also use zip deployment or Docker containers. What is a deployment slot? It is a live environment attached to your app where you can deploy a new version and then swap into production with no downtime. Scaling an app service. Vertical scaling means changing to a bigger plan. Horizontal scaling means adding more instances. Auto-scaling rules can be based on CPU, memory, or schedule. Mini review. App service equals managed platform, multiple runtimes, deployment slots, continuous deployment, and auto-scaling. What are Azure functions? They are serverless pieces of code that run on demand. You pay only when the code executes. What are triggers? Triggers define how a function is executed. Examples include HTTP requests, timer schedules, blob uploads, queue messages, event grid events, and service bus messages. What are bindings? Bindings provide input and output connections. For example, a function triggered by a blob upload can have an output binding to Cosmos DB. What is the difference between the consumption plan and the premium plan? In the consumption plan, you pay per execution, scale automatically, and have cold starts. In the premium plan, you get no cold starts, VNET integration, and more power but higher cost. How to implement functions? You can code in C#, JavaScript, Python, or Java. You can develop in Visual Studio, VS Code, or directly in the portal. Mini review. Functions equal event-driven, triggers, bindings, consumption pricing, and quick scalability. Why containers? Containers package applications with their dependencies, ensuring consistency across environments. What is Azure Container Instances? It allows you to run containers directly without managing servers. It is ideal for simple, isolated tasks. What is Azure Container Apps? It is a fully managed environment for microservices, scaling dynamically, supporting Dapper, and integrating with event-driven systems. What is Azure Kubernetes Service? It is a managed Kubernetes cluster for orchestrating containers at scale. It is more complex and is less emphasized in the AZ-204 than App Service and Functions, but you should know the basics. When to choose which? App Service is easiest for web apps. Functions are best for serverless events. Container instances are best for simple containers. Container apps, or AKS, are best for complex microservices. Mini review. Azure has multiple container options. For the exam, focus on container instances, container apps, and when to use them. Scenario 1. You need to host a REST API quickly with minimal infrastructure management. Solution: App Service. Scenario 2. You need to process images whenever a file is uploaded to blob storage. Solution: Azure Function with a blob trigger. Scenario 3. You need to run a Linux container that performs background jobs without managing servers. Solution: Azure Container Instances. Scenario 4. You need to run multiple microservices with service-to-service communication and scale based on events. Solution: Azure Container Apps. Scenario 5. You need enterprise-grade orchestration of many containers with custom networking. Solution: Azure Kubernetes Service. Mini review: always match the scenario with the right compute service. How do you deploy code to Azure Compute Services? Several methods exist. Option 1. GitHub Actions. Automate builds, tests, and deployments directly to app service or functions. Option 2. Azure DevOps Pipelines. Powerful CI/CD with integration to repositories, build agents, and release stages. Option 3. Zip Deploy. Upload a compressed file containing the app. Option 4. Docker Images. Push an image to Azure Container Registry and deploy to container instances, container apps, or app service for containers. Option 5. Visual Studio Publish. Quick but not recommended for production automation. Mini review: deployment equals GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, Zip Deploy, Docker, or Visual Studio Publish. Best Practice 1. Use deployment slots for zero-downtime releases. Best Practice 2. Use managed identities instead of embedding credentials. Best Practice 3. Configure health checks and monitoring to detect issues early. Best Practice 4. Use scaling rules to handle traffic spikes automatically. Best Practice 5. Separate development, staging, and production environments. Mini review: best practices revolve around reliability, security, scalability, and environment separation. Review time: what is compute in Azure? It is the ability to run applications in the cloud using app service, functions, and containers. App service: managed platform for web apps, APIs, and mobile backends with deployment slots and scaling. Azure functions: serverless, event-driven code with triggers and bindings, pay only when executed. Containers: portable apps. Container instances for quick jobs, container apps for microservices, AKS for large-scale orchestration. Deployment methods include GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, Zip Deploy, Docker Images, and Visual Studio. Best practices: deployment slots, managed identities, health checks, scaling rules, and environment separation. Final note: compute is the largest exam domain. Expect many scenario questions asking you to choose the correct service for the situation.